Hello, my name is Paul Fiesel, and we're here today with Mark Ohlinger, the president of Hasenstab Architects, and he's going to tell us more about how we can be sustainable when it comes to the facilities that we use. Mark?
Well, thanks, Paul. Thanks for introducing me. This presentation is titled Easy Steps to Being More Sustainable, and it really isn't that hard to be sustainable, whether we're building new or if we are just renovating or living day to day in our lives. So some folks will say that, this is all a big, doesn't mean a whole lot, but the realities are that humans are putting a big footprint behind on the earth. Really don't have to look too hard. Look at the population explosion that's occurred just over the last 100 years or so. The United States is over 307 million people. The world's at 6.8 billion, approaching 7 billion this year. So there are a lot of people here leaving an impact on Earth. Just look at the deforestation that's occurred, over 3 million acres of the 600 square miles of Earth that has been taken away. Garbage that we're creating, some 440 trillion pounds per year that we're creating just in the U.S. alone. And with CO2 emissions, there's 28 million metric tons per year. China is estimated to produce 6 million of that. The United States at 5.7 million of that. And even with the industrial chemicals that we use for our daily lives that we have around us, that we use all the time, but many of these we're finding are carcinogens. They are neurotoxins, dioxins, and we're passing them from mother to child before birth. So they're in our bloodstreams right now. So this is all the byproduct of humans, and this is the footprint that we're leaving with ourselves. So the question is how do we solve this, or is it solvable? Well, it is a big, big problem. It's a big, big subject, and certainly everyone has a different opinion about it. And, well, I hate to say it, but it's very political, too. You don't have to look too far there. So the question becomes, where do we start? So if you're building a new building or you're renovating, where's a good place to start if you do want to have less of an impact on our environment? Well, I would consider thinking of some sustainable design concepts. So right away you have to ask yourself, well, what does that really mean? Well, what does it mean to be sustainable? Well, if you look at a definition from McLellan, he would suggest it's to eliminate negative environmental impact completely through skillful and sensitive design. Well, that sounds like a lot of big words and doesn't really say what do you do. So I would suggest that you go to the USGBC, the United States Green Building Council, and go to their website and learn some of the things that they're doing and promoting as to what they're doing as it relates to buildings. And their mission is to transform the way buildings and communities are designed, built and operated, enabling an environmentally and socially responsible, healthful, prosperous environment that improves quality of life. So they've got a pretty broad mission there as to what to do with our buildings and our environment. It's more than just a building, but it's about the whole environment, society, and creating a way where we can leave less of an impact. The tool that they use is called LEED, which stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It was put together or rolled out in 1998 by the USGBC, and it's a tool that many of the architects and designers in the United States use to design sustainable buildings. There are a plethora of other sustainable design tools out there with different countries. Some of them are based off the LEED model. Some of them are totally different. You can certainly use these as a model to follow, but in the United States we tend to follow the LEED program. So what is it? Well, it's a way to look at a way of designing a building to see how can I save some energy, how can I use less water, how can I clean my water better that leaves my site, How can I reduce my CO2 emissions? How can I improve my indoor environment? And just being a good steward of our resources. So that's what it's kind of modeled around. And we'll talk a little bit more about some of the specifics of LEED and how to design. Certainly the LEED program looks at the building in a holistic way, looks at how you place your building on the site, how you take care of your water runoff, how you manage your water within your building as to what you use your water for. If it's processes, can you reuse that water, clean it, reuse it instead of using clean water? How do I use less energy, or how do I use my energy more wisely? Do I use green power? Do I buy green power? Material use, can I recycle what I'm using? Can I use recycled products? And then with indoor environmental quality, daylight, certainly there's a lot of evidence to suggest daylighting is very important in our buildings. And just cleaning our air in our buildings to make our buildings safer. There's a lot of evidence that our buildings are dirtier than the outside as it relates to the air. So how do I create a building that has air as at least clean as outside? The LEED system breaks buildings into different types: homes, neighborhood development, commercial interiors, core and shell, new construction, and schools, and healthcare. And there's actually a new separate one called healthcare by itself, but it looks at the different buildings because each building has a unique way that it operates and what it needs to do and how it impacts the environment, and how we can change our thinking as we design it and use it to have less impact on our environment. So they're specific to the building types. So as it relates to LEED, and on a broad scale, as we talk about a sustainable site, what are we talking about? We're talking about protecting our wetlands. We're talking about using an urban site over a greenfield site. So we would rather see building inside of an urban area than going out on a field and building there. Connectivity, that where you build, that you're connected to the rest of your community with a bus line or a subway or trains or cabs or some way, so you don't have to rely on the automobile to get people around, or that there's bicycle paths, walking paths that people use. We want to certainly control our storm runoff. We want to make sure we don't have more runoff than the site has now, so that we don't put more impact onto our stormwater systems, that we at least leave it the same, if not reduce it to zero. Heat island effect, as we build these big areas of sea of asphalt, black roofs and things, we're finding that we have a heat island effect, so how can we reduce that? And certainly encourage alternative transportation, whether, again, that's a bicycle or hiking or whatever that may be, so that we don't rely on the automobile. With water efficiency, we're trying to reduce the amount of water we use. Reduce certainly the amount of potable water. So if you're looking for a landscape irrigation system, we should be looking at how can I grab that stormwater off of my building, retain it, and use it to irrigate. Solves a couple of problems. I don't have water leaving the site, and I'm not using my potable water to now irrigate. I can use stormwater. We're looking at innovative ways to take care of our wastewater, whether that's through waterless toilets or low-flow toilet fixtures. As we look at processing water, can I clean that water and reuse it, as opposed to sending it through the sewage system and having it cleaned there. So, and we're also looking at how can I just reduce the amount of water I'm using. With energy and atmosphere, as it relates to that, we try to figure out, well, one, our buildings are getting to be more and more complicated. They're not simpler. If you look at a building built in the 60s, it basically had heating and sometimes an air conditioning system, usually minimal electric. They were really simple buildings. Well, today our demands on buildings is much greater. We move a lot more air. We want to be comfortable. We demand that all of our rooms are individually thermostated so that we can control our heating and cooling. Data needs on them are unbelievable. We now have security systems. You name it, it's getting more and more complicated. Doors now aren't just a simple latch a door, but it's electric hardware in a lot of cases. Badges are used to unlock doors. So it's getting to be more and more complicated. And what we're finding is that a lot of the buildings aren't working right. And it's because they were never really commissioned. Or as they were being built, we never really were able to test to see if everything was working together. And now it's the electrical systems trying to talk to the mechanical systems. And it's a computerized system that's trying to talk to both. So commissioning is a big thing in our new buildings, that we have an agent come in and make sure everything's working together and it's working properly. The other one is just enhanced refrigerant management. The refrigerants are toxic to our environment, so we want to make sure that we're using the proper refrigerants. And if we have old refrigerants in our buildings, that we have a plan to get those offline and get the more appropriate refrigerants in use. We also considered, can I create on-site renewable energy? So should I use photovoltaics? Should I use windmills? Things of that sort to create our own electric? And what new technologies are out there now to do that? I just read an article about shingles that create electric. Windows that are now creating electric that you can use. So there's technology coming out all the time. Some of it not tested yet. But as time goes on and as our population keeps on growing, those things are going to be coming at us faster and faster and will be tested over time. So I'm sure that there'll be more and more renewable systems available to us. We just have to watch for them. As the architects and designers and engineers, we're looking for those systems for our buildings. And then once you build it, it's one thing, but you have to make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do. And it continues to do it. So a management plan in place to make sure that all the systems are working. And then also looking at maybe buying our power from a renewable source, whether it's from First Energy, if they have a program where we can buy our renewable source. And while it may be a little more costly, we do know that we're doing less harm to our environment by using it. As it relates to materials and resources, we certainly look at recycling. We look at building reuse. Are we going to renovate a building as opposed to building new? Is it going to be more work, more harm to renovate versus new? So there's a whole system that you can use to measure that and make those decisions by with LEED. Construction waste is certainly one item where a lot of waste is created through construction. It's interesting that even with construction, they're looking at how can I reduce the amount of waste by using lean principles as to how can I not have products come with all the cardboard on it. How can I have products, how can I reduce the amount of waste that I create off my construction site? And what construction waste I do create, do I separate it and get it through a recycling program again so that it's being recycled and reused. Certainly we try to use regional materials within 50 miles of the construction site. The closer the better, using materials that are renewable and using wood that is certified as being wood that's renewable wood or that has been certified as wood that we can use. Certainly with our indoor air and quality performance, we're looking at how can I reduce the amount of chemicals and pollutants inside of my building. An example of one pollutant that most people don't think about is a fire retardant on our fabrics. That is a very toxic material, and unfortunately we're sitting in it day to day and we're using it day to day, so we're looking for products that can serve the fire requirements and we're not exposing ourselves to those chemicals. And we're looking also to how can I keep my ductwork clean during construction. I don't put the dust in it that can become a mold problem in the future, that I don't have that dust running through the building all the time. Daylighting is a big thing. There's so much research out there today that if I put windows in rooms, like in classrooms, and being connected to the outdoors with daylighting, the improved test scores that occur, the increased productivity of employees when they have a connection to the exterior. And there's just so much with that. The improved and improving length of stay when a patient has connection to nature, as opposed to being stuck in a room with four walls with artificial lighting. And then there's a whole section about just being innovative in design. And this one sometimes gives people consternation in that, how can I be innovative but not stick my neck out so far that I'm being liable for things? But there's certainly so much innovation occurring, whether it's through shading of a building, or maybe it's allowing plants to grow around the building to create shade so that we can reduce the heat load on that building. So there's so many ideas out there, and what's good about LEED is that it allows designers to work together, architects and engineers, to look at the building holistically and say, you know, maybe if I do allow a lot of plants to come around this building to put it in shade in the summer, I can reduce the heat load on that building, and I don't have to put in as big of an air conditioner. And if I don't put in as big of an air conditioner, maybe I can reduce the electrical service into the building. So it has a domino effect. It isn't a siloed approach. It's a holistic approach to the building, to how we look at it. So the question then becomes, so what if I'm not building a new building? What can I do? I sat down and thought about that and came up with 10 ideas. We can call them the 10 Mark ideas. And one is recycle. Certainly here in Akron, we have a recycle program. It's easy to do. While sometimes you may feel it's a pain to have to separate. Just by doing that, we're saving a lot of energy. The amount of energy it takes to make new glass, to make new paper, is unbelievable. We can recycle it. We're saving downstream the energy that's being used. This one is save the blue stuff. The toilet. It's kind of sad that we use water to transport our waste. There's better ways to do it, but unfortunately, it is not within our culture to want to handle it that way. So we still use water, but we could use a lot less water than what we're using today by using waterless urinals, by using low-flow toilets, by well, there's multiple ways. My kids had a saying, if it's yellow, let it mellow. If it's brown, flush it down. So there's a strategy there where maybe we don't like it as a society, but we can reduce the amount of water that we're doing. This one is seal the cracks. Sounds pretty straightforward, but I know I lived in an 80-year-old home, and I tolerated quite a few cracks in that old home. And a small crack can cost a lot in money and just in what you're spending on energy. But more importantly, it's the amount of carbon emissions created because we're having to condition that air, whether we're air conditioning it or if we're heating it. So certainly a caulk gun is your friend in this. If you can just keep the air from flowing from the indoor to the out, from indoor out or out in. This one is pretty straightforward too, installing a ceiling fan. If you have a two-story house, a ceiling fan does wonders. Or if you have a tall space like our office, a ceiling fan will do wonders to help move the air around, whether it's trying to get the hot air down or if it's trying to get the cold air up. A ceiling fan will run at using very little energy and help move that air around to make it more comfortable. And just having that air blowing over you in the cooling season helps you stay cool yourself just through evaporation of the body from your sweat that's created. So it's a simple and easy way to help be more comfortable. The next one is pretty straightforward too, is turning off the lights. It's amazing as you drive through our town at night, you see all the lights that are on, and you know that most of those spaces are empty. And you wonder why. Why didn't we turn off the lights? It's a culture change for us because nobody wants to be the last one out, be responsible for turning out the lights. But I think we have a responsibility to flip the switch, see if anybody's around, and just turn off the lights. Again, there's a lot of electric used that doesn't need to be used. The most effective insulation we have is our clothing. I remember when I was young, for some reason I wanted to wear my shorts in the winter. It's probably not the appropriate clothing. And it's put on, if you're cold, put on a sweater or get a blanket and wrap yourself. If you're warm, put on some shorts or undo your tie. We're caught up. In fact, I'm sitting here right now with a tie around my neck. Don't wear a tie and wear short sleeve shirts. Get comfortable because you can just reduce the amount of your heating and cooling. And there's just a savings there that we can do. And if everybody did it, it would be a big savings in the amount of carbon emissions and energy that's used. Last one is to reuse our computer supplies, whether printing supplies. Just have somebody refill them, reuse them. Don't send them to the trash system and buy new. It's pretty straightforward. You can go to just about all the stores now and get things refilled as you wait. Next one I know as an architect, paper seems to be our friend. Certainly we use a lot of paper, and I know that I have a mission in my office to make ourselves paperless. And it seems like the computer is fighting me with that because we tend to print a lot that you don't need to print. So we're looking at we use dual monitors now to reduce the amount of paper. Our goal in our office is to be paperless. But again, it's kind of hard when it's so accessible to be able to print it because we're in a point where we like to touch it and feel it to read it. But it's a culture change and it's a paradigm shift. And we're slowly working towards it, but our goal is to become paperless. I hope that you can join us in doing the same. Because again, we can conserve our forest and create less waste. Next one is to just use recycled products, whether that's in paper. We've had a long discussion in our office about using recycled paper. Can I buy it for the type of paper I need? But we've certainly moved towards recycled content in our paper so that we can reduce the effect in the environment. And the last one, I know that all the IT departments right now are going to say there's no way we can do this, but certainly you can do this at home. And that's to log off and turn off your computer. There's no need to leave a computer on when you're not sitting at it. So there's so much energy being used by our computers being left on, our systems being left on. If we just turn them off when we're not using them, per computer we can save 1,000 kilowatts of electric. That's big. That's big. And if everyone could do it, that would be real big. So that completes my presentation, and hope you enjoyed it. And a lot of things to think about on a big, big subject that breaks it down to small parts, where if we all did a little bit, we can have a big impact.
Mark, that's great. I really appreciate the information, the background on why this is important, what we can do if we are doing new construction as well as any kind of a redesign. And then even for those folks that maybe don't have any kind of construction project going on right now, we can still have 10 things that we can do. So thank you very much for your time, and I hope everybody learned something.